Hey everyone, Baps Hockey here with the Player Coach Podcast. So here I have a special guest, an old friend of mine, Kevin Chapman. We used to work together in Future Stars. Thanks for coming out, Kevin.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me here.
He's it's great to have some different minds up here. And so we took a little shift here, bringing a strength and conditioning coach. Again, when we worked together, we were training guys, training youth hockey players. And then when I went to college, you started moving more into strength and conditioning. You were working up at Whitby and then moved into working at head strength and conditioning coach up at Ryerson, and then found yourself in Russia up in the KHL, and now with the Russian Hockey Federation, working with a lot of youth players. Why don't you tell everyone kind of your story, how you got there, and then we'll give everyone some insights on how trainings change and how players at the youth and pro level can kind of develop their bodies to sustain the big long seasons that everyone's having.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I guess it all started back when I was coaching minor hockey. We were working together at Future Stars, and then I think I quickly realized it's probably a terrible idea for me to be a hockey coach. So I moved more into the strength and conditioning side. I was in school at the time when I was working with you, and then I was just really fortunate enough to network with some really good people, work with some really good coaches. I was with the Oshawa Generals. I was working with DJ Smith, now head coach in Ottawa. Awesome guy, really good coach. Ryerson University was a really good experience as well, working with some of those varsity athletes. And then I got my opportunity in the KHL. David Nemirovsky, he's actually a Toronto guy, hired me, and we had a really good coaching staff there. Sandis Ozelinch.
Oh wow.
With David, and then this season I was really fortunate to get hired by the Russian Hockey Federation to work with their under 20 team, under 18 team, under 16 team, and I'm also with Sochi in the KHL, so I do both jobs. And it's been a pretty wild ride the last couple of years.
Well, especially with like a COVID year, for a lot of people, especially in the strength and conditioning field, you really don't see them. It's hard to get jobs right now. It's hard to get out, especially overseas, and to get to work with so many young players, especially in Russia, where again, there's a powerhouse next to Canada and America. Like, you're getting to go over there, work with so many young, talented players. How's that been so far?
Yeah, this year has been really crazy with COVID, especially with the way the pandemic is playing out in North America. Lots of people with no jobs, so that was kind of a big driving force for me to come back here this year. Having a steady salary. I got my wife and son back home. I'm very lucky that my wife is so understanding and supportive of what I do. And obviously it's tough with them back home, but very fortunate to have work and a salary right now.
Well, yeah, it's all our wives are very understanding for the careers that we have. It doesn't matter if you're a player or a coach, either one. Like, they have to be. It's kind of a prereq, and it's amazing that we have that support.
Yeah, we're very, very lucky.
Yeah, for sure. Well, how has the whole COVID thing been over there for you guys? Has it been similar? Obviously, you're here in the North American side. How has that transition been, and what are some of the hurdles that you guys had to face going into Russia and going into overseas? Like, I know you're in Sweden now.
Yeah, we're in Sweden right now with the men's national team for the the pre-qualifying for the World Championships. We got a tournament here, but honestly, it's been a pretty up and down year. I think the pandemic on its own has been challenging for everybody in their own way, but it's a little bit different in Russia. Like, they decided to just keep the league going.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been fine, honestly. Obviously there's been a lot of cases of the virus in the league, but nothing serious. Most guys just kind of get over it, and the league goes on. When I head back to after the break here, we're at game 55 out of 60.
Oh, wow.
5 games left before playoffs, and a lot of good import guys over here. They're able to play, and potentially end up back in North America or re-sign another deal here. So the league's going strong, and it's been really good.
Well, it's nice to see, at least nice to hear that you have other places that are able to find a way to push through and just play. And again, from here, like playing in the coast, playing the SP, hearing from other players, all NHL, AHL, they're just finding so many hurdles they're going through. Players up in Germany, in France, and it's great to see that at least the league's they're able to push through it a little bit more and just trying to help everyone see, like, look, we just gotta get through it. We got to get through. We got to make sure we're precautionary. But yeah, no, that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, I mean, like we also get like 2 times a week COVID tests, antibody tests once a month. Like the league's done a good job of keeping the players safe over here. And same in North America too. Like I was just really impressed the way the NHL pulled off the playoffs last year.
Yeah,
It was pretty flawless. They're having some issues with the season right now, postponing games and all that. But I mean, I think until this thing is under control, then this is our new normal or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and it seems like it's just precautionary. Even if I don't think they would, if they in the playoffs, they probably just be able to get through. But right now, they're probably just being precautionary, knowing they can make up the games. But well, let's just hope they keep going through. Speaking of the NHL, we were talking about this before. I brought up the Line Dubois trade. Everyone was kind of saying 50-50. I personally thought that the trade was a big W for Winnipeg, just knowing, like, after Dubois' performance in the playoffs, I was like, this is an absolute steal. I can't believe it's happening. And just, you feel like someone would do their homework. Like Torch just doesn't. It's not going to work, but everyone said it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And lo and behold, last night the guys got 0 minutes in the third period. They win 3-2, and you're like, man, it clearly worked. But now you're not playing. It's 13 minutes, and he's supposed to be this. He is a superstar, but he's not playing.
Pretty wild, man. Like I think both those guys, same draft year, second and third overall pick. You're swapping 2 pretty good players 1 for 1 pretty much. But Torts, the one thing I like about his coaching style, it's consistent.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you are. If you don't play the way he wants, then you're in the doghouse.
Yeah, and and I think it's a great. I think it's a great example for young players to understand that even though there is this new age of coaches like in Toronto where you're being more player coach type mentality, you still need to be held to a certain standard, and coaches, regardless of how they evolve, are still going to hold their players that way. And it doesn't matter if you're a 35, 40 goal scorer like Line, you're going to get sat on the bench if you're not playing the right way.
Yeah, for sure. And I can speak to my experience in Oshawa with DJ. I think he was a master at that. We had a very good team. We won the Mem Cup in 2015, and even the seasons prior to that, we had some good teams, went on some pretty deep playoff runs. But he was like that in the room, right? Like it didn't matter if you were, top player or a rookie breaking into the league. He made everybody work hard. Very good culture in the room that everybody was held to, and he wasn't scared to bench guys or scratch guys if he needed to. And I think that that culture just it's contagious when you got it.
And so, did you feel like those young players, you're more so your higher skill talent, like your strength and conditioning coach, you're more in the background. You kind of hear the mutterings outside of the dressing room. Do you think was the mindset more of, okay, like it doesn't matter that I'm going to be in the first round in the draft in the NHL, I need to still work or I'm not going to play? Or was it still like, wait, this new school where, oh, I'm too good to fail. I'm gonna play no matter what.
Well, on that team in particular, we had some really good leaders. Josh Brown, who's now in Ottawa with DJ, he was the captain there, and he was unbelievable captain on that team. It was just like if you didn't work, you're just gonna fall behind. And me being the strength and conditioning coach, it's kind of an interesting position on any team because you're a little bit of a hybrid coach. Obviously you're going to report to the coach as to what guys are doing. And, if he asks about work ethic, all that kind of stuff, you got to be honest. But I think players kind of gravitate to guys like us more because sometimes we can just be like an ear to bend, if they're frustrated with whatever. And We're not going to take away ice time from players. That's not our job, but our job is to keep guys, even when they're scratched, keep them motivated, keep them training, keep them ready to play when they're called on, right?
Well, yeah, and that's I have a couple buddies that are strength coaches, and they said the same thing. Like they have to find a way to be real creative to get players motivated, to keep them developing. And it's not just the skills coaches, the assistant coaches, the strength coaches got to make sure they're still taking care of their bodies. Because again, at the junior level, not so much, but at the pro level, it's easy to drift into the shenanigans outside that go outside of hockey. It's easy to get kind of caught up in all the other things going on versus like, okay, like, are we going to get the work in? Even if it's just 30 minutes, 40 minutes, just take care of your body so that when you do get those opportunities, like when something comes up, you have to be ready to go.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's like, a huge piece of what I wouldn't say preach, but what I teach players is like, it's not just like, because you see all kinds of personalities, like, there's hockey players that like, are just very high skilled and all they want to do is play games,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say they're lazy in the gym, but it's just not their thing. Then you got the other side of things where you got some players that really aren't very good hockey players, but are just like gym nuts,
Yeah.
and then everything else in between. But the big thing that I like to teach guys is like, the training on the ice, the training off the ice, it's all important, but it's like the little things that add up. I think a lot of young kids, especially like, they're all looking for these little hacks on like, what supplement should I take, or, this and that,
yeah.
but like just eating well, getting to bed early, quality sleep, all that stuff. And with the young guys now too, I find that, it's hard to get them to sleep properly because all the technology, these guys are always plugged in, phones, iPads, video games,
Apple watches, they can't get, they're just attached
yeah.
to these things.
And this stuff is even finding its way into the gym now. Like, we even use some technology in the gym, so we need iPads, like, things like some velocity based stuff that we use that goes to the iPads. We're not on like YouTube in the gym, obviously, but I mean, like, it's hard to escape. But these guys are so plugged in all the time. I always tell these guys, at least an hour before bed, unplug everything and just chill, read a book, whatever. So, but it's the little things, right? Like nutrition, sleep. And I think another big one for me is a lot of guys maybe should have other interests outside of hockey, just so their brains can kind of disconnect from the game once in a while.
Well, yeah, no, it's you need to find that disconnection. Even with me, like I'm playing and I know that I can't do BAPS hockey all the time because then it's just hockey, 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 hockey. Like me and my wife try to go do some stuff, and I'm not saying go get a wife, but go do something else with the boys, go watch a movie, like just find something else. You need to find some separation and something that involves hopefully some activity, not just sitting on Netflix and just watching his episodes all day. But speaking of the youth, so let's get into like what we wanted to discuss. Like I've told you from my standpoint, last 5 years I've been training functional patterns. I hope to get one of the guys on here one time. They're more avoiding from anything on axial load, any type of loading on the spine. Not a lot of sagittal plane movement. They try to focus more on just running, throwing. Those are kind of their main things that they focus on. But again, you working on the strength side, I know that the strength and conditioning's changed in hockey. It's not focused on just deadlifting and squatting anymore. But it's more like, okay, how can we get these players to play and sustain this type of all these games? We talked about youth and pro hockey players. How would you say, how has training changed for youth players, and what are kind of your protocols for you guys, and what are you guys doing to help them again develop in a healthy fashion?
Yeah, it's like a really good question actually, because like the way that I see it, like even myself, I've been at this now for over 10 years, so been fortunate to work with some really good strength coaches, have some good mentors, and like I look back on a lot of the training that I did 10 years ago, 5 years ago even. It's always changing, always adapting. The young guys, my opinion on that is like I think that a lot of I wouldn't say a lot of coaches, but it's kind of not a great idea to think that you can train a youth player the same way as a professional for a lot of reasons. When you're young, your body is a lot more resilient. you know.
Mhm.
Young guys can afford to push the boundaries a little bit more. And I believe that, when kids are young, that's the time that they can really build some, like, a good base of strength.
Yeah.
Strength is a skill just like puck handling and skating. Like, if you don't train it, if you don't practice it, you can lose it pretty quick.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, like, it's not like we do like powerlifting programs with them. Like,
Mm.
some of that stuff can be effective. But, my approach with a lot of the young guys, 15, 16, 17 years old, we stick to the basics for a long period of time. Whatever that is, it could be a squat, it could be a deadlift, it could be, bench press, whatever, you know what I mean? Push, pull, lunge, squat, hinge, the basics, and then, as guys start getting a little older and they started getting more miles on their body through playing a lot of hockey games, we're changing things a lot. And like you mentioned, functional patterns, that's like a whole other training system. But, there's some stuff in there that's really good. Like, our professional guys now, we'll spend almost a whole month in the off season just, restoring their bodies from the season that they had.
Yeah.
There's
No, absolutely.
so many good strength coaches in the league, in the NHL. Like, I don't think a lot of these guys come back, out of shape, that's for sure. But, just the travel and the amount of games, the amount of ice during the season. We were lucky in our gym, MiloAthletics in Toronto. We have a really good osteopath, Steph Canestrell, that works with us. So she's responsible for the first assessment of the off season, and then we design programs based off of her, expertise. It's a full orthopedic assessment. So, the whole first month of training is just kind of addressing injuries and weak points, and then we can get into some of the more fun stuff for the older guys.
Well, yeah, it seems to be like a little bit more diligent approach and trying to make sure their bodies are back to neutral, especially during a season. Like, it's just so taxing. You really have to get back and take care of that. But before we jump into the pros, I want to go back to the youths because again, I work with a good chunk of youth players in season specifically, and even going younger than say 16 years old. A lot of the things I get, or questions I get from parents are,
Mhm.
what supplements do I need to be taking? Like, my kids being told they need to get stronger, they need to get stronger, need to get stronger. And again, I always say, like, less on supplements, more on healthy food. I try to give them something more general. Again, even from the strength side, I try to get them to build more coordination versus trying to build mass necessarily at these like younger. I think anything between 12 and 14, 15 years old, I'm not trying to tell them like, oh yeah, just start lifting random weights. Like, low, like, you need to be coordinated. You can't even run up and you can't do high knees coordinated. How can you build mass on that? And so, what would you tell parents that are looking or having those types of questions when it comes to supplements, and their coaches are, again, more old school coaches, it tends to be, put more
Mhm.
mass on, put more mass on. How would you approach that?
Well, it's interesting because, like, like the way hockey is evolving, I think a lot sooner kids are getting into the gym, right? And
Mhm.
like I was saying, like, my whole belief, I don't really, we start training guys around 15 years old, and that's just more of our preference because, like, that's the age where I kind of see that kids are, like, physically mature enough and mentally mature enough to, because, training's tough. It's not like it's, you've played pro, played college hockey, to really get any benefit out of training, like, it's not easy, but I think that, for a lot of the young guys, I think a lot of them start strength and conditioning program too soon. Like, I'm a huge believer in multi-sport up until, at least 15 years old, where, then you can see if you're actually good enough to specialize in one sport. That's my opinion. But
No,
there's a
yeah.
really good coach in Massachusetts. His name's Jeremy Fritsch, kind of like an
Okay.
under the radar kind of guy. He's doing some really, really cool stuff with the young guys, and it's like it's basically just structured play. All the
Oh,
stuff
wow.
that you would normally do in phys ed class when you're a kid. So any of the parents that are watching right now, they might want to look that guy up. His whole gym is just crash mats. He's got these guys. running, jumping off walls, diving for balls. It's a lot of like I say, structured play, but they're having to solve problems as they're going through training. Like
Oh,
actual work in the gym. Like when you get into like a real strength and conditioning program, I think that there's so many young kids that just aren't ready for it mentally. Definitely it's not bad for them physically, but I think that it's important for kids to take their time to really get into like a structured strength and conditioning program. We can tell kind of right away when a guy comes in the gym
yeah,
that they're
they're ready for it.
but for young kids, I really believe like, just play, have fun. When the time's right, you can really start diving into the strength and conditioning side of things.
Then what about the supplement side? Because I always get that. It's always nonstop supplements. It just seems to be on top of that. What would be your stance on supplements and younger players, especially? It can even be for the 16, 17-year-olds. I remember when I was that age, we were all trying to take everything. It's just like, let's take some creatine, let's take some protein, let's just jack this up. Let's take as much energy as we can.
Yeah, I think honestly for the young guys, I think it's just a huge waste of money for the parents, and that's just that's the honest answer. But like I also studied nutrition in school for 2 years after I finished up my other degrees and stuff. But nothing trumps just a good balanced whole foods diet, and it starts with that. There's no doubt about it. In terms of supplements for the young kids, like if they're not eating well, then really there's no point.
Mhm.
But like for me, for example, like if we got like a 16, 17-year-old kid that's trying to put some size on, yeah, we use some creatine because it definitely helps the process. But again, they're not eating well, sleeping, enough, and it's just not going to work, right? So we're
Yes.
careful with what we prescribe to the guys in terms of supplementation as well.
So yeah, so it's more, and I think that's super important is we got to be really careful when we start, or like when I see these guys just, whether it be on social media or people I know where they're just like spitting out, this will guarantee you this and that. And you're like, whoa, we don't really know for sure. Everybody's a little bit differently. I've had bad experiences with different types of supplements and I'm going like, man, like they're really not telling you the other side. They just want to take your 60, 70 bucks for that month. And it's hard for you to really gauge if any of that stuff's actually working.
Yeah, that's for sure. And like, I mean, like that's the fitness industry anyways. It's, there's a lot of that stuff out there, but I mean, like real results, so for the young guys listening to this too, it takes time, it takes effort, a lot of effort, consistency, and my big advice is just learn how to eat, learn how to cook.
Yeah.
I
Oh
think
my
getting in the
God.
kitchen with the parents is huge, right? Like, actually, I just talked to there's a kid that well, he's not even a kid anymore. He's 18 now. He was a second round draft pick to the New York Rangers this past year. And with COVID, they made the exception. He's too young to play in the American League, but because the OHL is not going,
Yeah.
um, he's in the American League. So he's living on his own for the first time. And I was talking to his mom on the phone the other day, and she was so impressed with him. Like he's doing his own laundry, he's
Wow.
cooking his own meals, and for me as a coach, I was actually really really proud of him too because I'm always in his ear from a young age, like you should learn how to cook, and he's always been a good eater, and his mom's incredible. She always looks after him, but that was really cool to hear that he's on his own for the first time and he's cooking all his own meals and all that.
Well, yeah, no, it's too many players in college don't know how to cook. And then when they come to pro and you're like, oh, I'll just get Uber Eats. I had a buddy, I'm not telling you his name, but that guy's Uber Eats receipts for the year were an insane number. And I could not believe it. I was like, bro, like just make some food. And
Yeah,
he would just like, he's like, nah, I'm gonna eat out. And it's just like it adds up, man, real quickly. And really speaking to the eating healthy, now moving to as we get older, okay, so we know we got to eat healthy, we know we got to get some sleep, like we know that's where growth happens. As we move up now, like talking to 19 and 20-year-olds, how has that training changed? Because I know from my experience, the gym that I get to work out of, mine right up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, they used to like Chase M. Not he's a trainer there for us in St. Norbert, and he was always like he tended to be more of like just all lifting when we were
Mhm.
in college. I was like the focus. That's what every hockey trainer was doing essentially over 10 years ago. But now, even with talking to him, they're doing more full body lifts. They're doing more coordinated lifts. They're doing, if they're lifting weights, like you already see, like they've evolved the training, and he doesn't really see, he's not spending so much time on max lifts. Even with like his football guys, they're not max lifting all day. Like they're doing more coordinated lifts. They're doing more conditioning, more movement based stuff. Where's the training changed? Like how is that where everything's moving when you're starting to leave that 18, 19-year-olds and now going into pros or college?
Yeah, it's definitely changed for sure because hockey is a very demanding sport on the body. We're starting to see, and there's a lot of research on this too. The amount of hip and groin injuries, at young ages, 14, 15, 16 years old, and obviously into the pros. That's the big thing that we're trying to hopefully, prevent as best we can is these, overuse injuries. Um, and like as too, like these junior players, not so much in college though, because I think that they do a really good job with their schedule. The travel's not too
Yeah,
crazy and they don't play too many games, but CHL, they're playing 68 games in a season. It's almost
yeah.
the same as the American Hockey League, right? Um, so we kind of take a similar approach with the young guys as well in the off season. Is we're going to get them assessed right away before they even touch a weight. We want to see what their body's doing and not doing, and we're going to go over injuries from the season, all that type of thing. But we, every day in the gym in the summertime, even with me in season here, like we spend a good amount of time on warm-ups, and that could
Yeah.
be a multitude of things, right? Like mobility type stuff, just getting tissue prep before the big stuff that we do that day, um, you know, sprinting, dynamic mobility, different things like that. So every day our warm up could be anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes before we even get into the workout, right?
Okay.
The more we do that type of stuff, like just focusing on muscle activation and just kind of attacking those problem areas, keeping guys tissue quality good, keeping them moving well. Then when we start getting into the weightlifting stuff, then they're just moving better, feeling better, all that type of thing. So warm-ups are key. Like even for me in season right now in the KHL, it's really hard to actually find good quality time to train based on the game schedule.
Yeah.
We get it in when
Absolutely.
we can, but every day we're going through thorough warm-ups for ice, and then we do our strength training when we can.
So would you say then in season for players in college, obviously like they have those structures. It's not like crazy amount of games, but for us, you're looking at players in that 15 to 19 junior players and those pro players to use their warm-ups almost as their like not training per se, but really working on activating the right muscles, making sure you're balancing your body out, using it as an opportunity to prep, but at the same time take advantage of that time to work on some balancing that body out so that when you're playing you're not just feeding that deficit, whether it's like groin and hip issues.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think too, like not we don't do this every day, but some of the warm-ups that we do are actually pretty tough, right? Like
Yeah.
even though we're not actually like lifting weights and that, like, and it's also kind of a sneaky way to get some conditioning in as well. Like some of it too is like, we'll have guys on heart rate monitors and we can get their heart rate up to like 140, 150 beats in a warm up. It's not max heart rate, but if we're doing that for 20 minutes, like,
Well, that's what you're getting in
it's
a
a sneaky
game.
way to
In a
kind of get some.
game, like you're not getting like a 180, 190 heart rate. You're probably out of shape if you're doing that a game where you're
Yeah,
been on the ice for 2 minutes. Um,
for
uh,
sure.
but no, that's true. I like that, and I think I personally unconsciously, I try to been doing that in the sense to try to use my warm up as like this 15 minutes where I'm going to just work on trying to balance my body and try to get it ready to, because again, like I try to do a lot of glute work and try to do a lot of step work to try and, again, I know that my hips and groins are taking most of the load when I'm skating. And so trying to get those things working and trying to get I try to say like my posterior chain, any type of rows, because again, that stuff it just doesn't, you don't do much of it in hockey in general.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, like, the stuff we see with some of the assessments early in the off season, like a lot of guys in hockey that play hockey present the same way. They got, that anterior tilt in the pelvis just because they're in that skate position all the time. We see a lot of like poor posture, that type of thing. And, we try to address those weak points for sure. But I'm not like we definitely lift weights. It's
Yeah.
important for hockey. Hockey's
Well, no,
it's a strength speed sport. But I mean, like it's people that don't really. Everyone's got an opinion in our field, right?
yeah, no,
You
for
can't
sure.
you can't train hockey players the same way that you would train a football player just based off of the demands on the body from the game. Especially when you're working with like professionals where their livelihood depends on you. I had a really good talk with Connor Brown this summer. He's not even that old of a guy. Mid 20s, and he spent a lot of time through his younger years. He broke out in the NHL doing a lot of big lifts,
Yeah.
and he was kind of feeling like a little bit unbalanced on the ice. And then we got away from that for a summer, just doing a lot more, single leg work, a lot of, more like, three-dimensional work in the gym, not just working in the sagittal and frontal planes.
Yeah.
And he felt great, like he was moving very well. His body was balanced out. And we're taking that approach a lot more. Like, we still do some of the big lifts with the guys because they need to, but I think just the way the game's going now, guys want to be faster, guys want to be mobile. So yeah, you need to be really, right. Like you see a way, like like the best skaters in the league. It's amazing what these guys do out there. So if you're just big and stiff, it's not really going to carry over to the game.
And yeah, and that's where you see a lot of the college guys when they move into the pro circuit is they try to carry that same regiment from college, and it's just not. It's not translatable due to the games and the practice time and everything that happens and the travel. I think again, like those recommendations, especially for pro guys, is just like being smart. Obviously, get your workouts in when you can. You get a couple days off, but try to use your warm up as a time to get some prep time in. Like get to work and activate some of those areas so you can connect your body together.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in a solid warm up every day. Like even on off days, like when guys are at home, like
Do
just doing a little
something.
bit of mobility work at home or whatever, it's not going to hurt. But
Okay.
it's a huge piece of what we do. Like I just from my own experience working with athletes at all ages, like I said to you before too, like I think the younger guys can, we still do good warm ups with them, but they can kind of get away with it a little longer. Like we don't spend as much time in warm up with our young guys as our pro guys,
Yeah.
just because they their bodies can kind of get into some of that more demanding work a little bit sooner.
Yeah.
But the reason why we obviously focus on the warm ups with them is just we want to build good habits young,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
when we see that they need more of something, we'll just add it in, right? So, but it's important. Like these guys need to learn how to warm up properly and look after themselves. Because like the other thing too is that like people will spend 3-4 months with us in the summer, right? Like they're paying to train with us, and then obviously we keep in touch with all of our clients throughout throughout their season wherever they go, but they're in somebody else's hands. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they may call us for some advice here and there, and we talk to them at least weekly, right? But they're with their strength coach, they're going to do that program, but it's important that they're our job is to teach that they know enough how to warm up if we're not around, and all this type of thing, right? And they know what works for their body.
No, absolutely. And yeah, and that's just a great way for parents and players to gauge the importance of warm-ups, when to get their training in, kind of what age bracket they want to get started in it. And really in going back to what you talked about earlier about the importance of play, really just being out there and just playing a bunch of different sports so that their bodies are just coordinated. That's an easy way to get your body coordinated, especially we don't need to be focusing too much on all these different types of workouts or regimented workout way too young. They have plenty of time for that once they, again, get to 15, 16 years old.
Yeah, for sure. Like my son, he's 2 years old now, and like I'm obviously looking forward to him getting into sports, right? But for me, like I think it's so important just for those young guys just to just have fun when you're young and just play as many sports. It's because it's that's where you're gonna meet some of your friends for the rest of your life, and it's through
Absolutely.
sport. And I think it's in the summertime. Me personally, I don't want to be sitting in hockey rinks. I wouldn't mind sitting outside watching him play
Yeah.
baseball or soccer or something.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. You already get enough of that was winter. So,
Exactly.
but as we tail more to the end here, from a coaching standpoint, I like to ask all the coaches and even players that I'll bring on here, what would you say the number one or the most impressionable coaching philosophy that you've used or have been used on you that other coaches and other players could use to help develop their own game or something that they could use to live by? Like, what's a coaching philosophy that you find is like your cornerstone?
It's kind of like for me, it's like I heard this a while ago. It's athletes really don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I think being a good person, number one, is going to go a long way. You got to know your stuff, whether it's, if you're a hockey coach, the X's and O's of the game, or if you're a strength coach, same thing in the gym. But I feel like no matter what, we're paid to deliver results, but we're working with humans every single day, right? So my whole philosophy is built around relationships, keeping good relationships, and just being a good person to whoever I work with. Doesn't matter where I am and who I'm working with.
Absolutely. And you, especially nowadays, it's pretty easy to get stuck in the social media black hole. And we feel like we have a relationship, but it's different when you're actually connecting with someone. And it's important as a coach to do that. And I love hearing that. And that's something that, again, more coaches and more players want to be hearing and need to be practicing. One thing I always do at the podcast, and I know you're not a hockey coach, but you're a hockey guy, you see it all the time. I ask everybody what their definition of hockey IQ is. Some people say hockey sense, whatever. It's you can switch them back and forth, but how would you define hockey IQ in say 2 sentences?
Well, for me, it's a lot different, obviously, being on the strength side of things. But I think that, and it applies to the game and it applies to the off ice stuff too, is just be consistent, all the time with whatever it is you're doing. You know what I mean? I think consistency is the key to any results in sport and in life, right? So build good habits and just be consistent every day, with the way that you train, with the way that you kind of interact with your coaches and your teammates. Your life away from the rink as well. Good habits and consistency, that's gonna transfer to ultimately good hockey IQ. Be a student of the game. I find that a lot of like we talked about before too with I watch some like 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds on the ice now, and they're so good. It's actually crazy how good these guys are. They just look like miniature Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews out there with their skill sets. Like we said, when they make that jump to any level higher than where they are, it's always tough, right? But there's a lot of talent out there, but I think consistency in training and everything is key.
Well, no, well, I appreciate it, Kevin. I appreciate you taking the time because I know you're in Sweden. It's late night over there. For here, it's a little bit different for us. But again, you have your gym back home in Toronto. We have a lot of people listening up in back home. Why don't you plug up your stuff, what you do in the off season, where you're located, and where people can find you. I'll make sure to tag it in when I post this up.
Yeah, our gym's based out of Mississauga. Our home base is the Canadian Ice Academy, and our business is MiloAthletics. I work with Brian Marshall, who's the director of performance with the Vancouver Canucks. So I mean, like we really specialize in hockey players. We train athletes in other sports as well, but hockey's our niche and our bread and butter. But yeah, we run an off-season program. Hopefully soon we're going to get more into the in-season stuff with some academy work and working with some players in season as well. But for now, mainly off-season. But MiloAthletics in Mississauga.
Awesome. Well, everyone's got it there. I'll make sure to tag you in MiloAthletics to make sure everyone can jump in on there. Just want to say thank you for taking the time. Again, bringing in some different perspectives, especially from the strength training side. I've been getting a ton of questions, and I think I know you were able to answer a lot of those questions. I know parents are going to find that insightful. So thanks again for coming on, Kev.
Thanks for having me, Mason, man. Good talking to you again, eh?
Oh yeah, always a good time. We always had a good time back in the day, and it's great catching up. So everyone, thanks again for tuning in. We're gonna have some more people coming out here in the next coming weeks. Make sure to check out MiloAthletics. Check out all the other podcasts we have on here, and stay tuned for some more insightful podcasts on the Player Coach Podcast to take your game to the next level.